Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Magnetic Podcast. Very excited today to have Ty Haney on, founder of Outdoor Voices and now community-led growth platform TYB. Ty, thanks so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so I know Ty actually hopped on last week. We had some internet problems. So some of this stuff, Ty, I know will be like a recap, but we'll try to get through this real quick in the beginning. But I'd love to just, for people that don't know you, who might live under an e-commerce rock, can you give us a little bit of a background on yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, of course. So currently the founder and CEO of TYB, Play to Earn Community Rewards platform. We'll get into that. But my prior life was all about starting a company out of college called Outdoor Voices in the direct-to-consumer e-com space. And really with Outdoor Voices, we were setting out to free fitness from performance and build a brand that inspired people to move on a daily basis. And so we made recreational apparel. I had grown up in Boulder, Colorado, super outdoorsy town, been an athlete all my life, loved, lived and breathed kind of the Nike mentality when the goal at the time was to cross the finish line first. I then went to school in New York, to art school, and was no longer active. And from a mental and physical standpoint was like, wow, I don't recognize myself. And so at that moment had the inspiration to create this brand that looked and felt very different to the traditional, mostly macho kind of athlete experience and really build a brand that rallied around this call to action of doing things, that approached activity with joy and ease and friendship and delight. And 8 years in, we had built a very kind of enthusiastic, passionate fan base around this brand that was really well loved. And so can talk more about that, but that was kind of my early innings and first company that really kind of led to the creation of TYB.
So I didn't know that you had went to art school. So do you mind giving me a little bit of background on how you got from art to apparel, or if that was a seamless transition, or if you were always trying to start your own business? Like, when did that kind of happen for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't have called going to art school or getting into apparel. I've very much always been someone that likes to build things. So like starting something from zero and kind of setting a vision and going and executing against it, I feel like I've done, in infant form since I was little, and always been kind of creatively minded like that. So I actually took a year off after high school. I was kind of deciding if I wanted to pursue athletics or what I wanted to do. I went to Boston for that year off. Worked in a restaurant, which was actually like one of my fondest memories. And then moved to New York to go to Parsons Design School. It was an interesting program because you took classes at Parsons, but you took business classes at Columbia. I think it was like the second year that they offered this program. All of it was pretty awesome. I think most importantly, I was able to learn through the art classes how to visualize my ideas, put them on paper, and then through the Columbia classes, more of kind of just the foundational accounting and pitching and kind of like getting in front of people and having a strategic plan, et cetera. So the combination worked quite nicely. I'd say what was most valuable, however, was growing up during that time, like fully immersed in New York and like having the energy there and just the network and the talent. And so very much took advantage of being in New York in kind of my late teens and early 20s to get around the people that I most admired and essentially wanted kind of to have similar careers too.
That's really cool. It's funny. My path was almost like the opposite. I also had played sports, so that was like a big thing. Weird shift after college of like, what is my new sport? Because like I always was like so driven in athletics, and then when you graduate, lacrosse was like the pro lacrosse scene was not something that was like super as it is today. I think it's actually a career path, but back then it wasn't. And so I had this kind of like crisis of thought of like, what's my next like championship? Like, what does that look like? So, and I ended up in New York and then Boston. So
funny.
That's awesome. Have missed each other. What was the restaurant in Boston? I'm curious because I was there for 5 years. So,
the Border Cafe in Harvard Square.
Okay.
Do you know? Tacos everywhere, margaritas,
yeah,
etc.
No, I've been there. It's a great spot. So I moved up to the north end, like the Little Italy, when I first moved up to Boston. So I was in finance in New York, was not cut out for that at all. Was sort of like let go. And then I went up to Boston, joined HubSpot, and then was in the north end, was in the west end, and then was in Seaport. And I had joined Klaviyo after HubSpot. So I was like super Boston tech scene. And then that's what inspired me to start my own software company. Is I was like, I got really lucky, like HubSpot and Klaviyo. Honestly, like I can't brag about them enough. I do it on this
Right.
podcast all the time. But it was honestly kind of a negative thing too, because when I started my own company, I was trying to build similarly to Klaviyo and HubSpot. And they're like true unicorns in the sense that like not every business can be Klaviyo. So
Yep.
that was interesting, but it's really cool to see how our paths were kind of like, I guess, intertwined at some point, very similar backgrounds. So that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to building stuff, that's something that you're deeply passionate about. I mean, you had Outdoor Voices, and you had Joggy, and now TYB. The first two being more D2C brands, now with TYB moving into software. I was curious, like, how do you think about that idea of building stuff, moving from like a product to something more digital in the sense of like software?
Yeah, I joke, but it's true. I thank whatever God's up there for not having to sell leggings anymore or do something with sizing. Like, that was a beautiful experience, but the planning and, everything that went around, like moving widgets that fit people different ways, was very challenging. And so, learned a lot in terms of what to do and what not to do. But what I love about building software, though I'm kind of a first-time software founder, is once you get kind of the foundation right, it's massively scalable. And so from a funding perspective, it makes a lot more sense to me that software businesses are the ones that should be getting large amounts of dollars, because of they're essentially built to have this like accelerated, fast, scalable growth that we hear about. And oftentimes, and in my experience, applied to brands that aren't meant to scale that quickly. And so it's refreshing to step into this. It's also quite energizing in that we're able to take what we did very well at Outdoor Voices, which was build this super engaged, passionate community that quite literally became our most productive growth channel at Outdoor Voices, and create a platform that allows brands to build this game around their brands in a similar way. And so the impact with this kind of view on the world is, we call it community integrated commerce, has the potential to get much larger, much more quickly, because we can, onboard multiple brands a week into this way of creating a game around their brand.
Yeah, I love that, because I had a similar experience, but I didn't build an actual legit apparel brand. I built like a very tiny kind of self-starter apparel brand as a part of like my Klaviyo onboarding. You had to build an apparel brand, and I ended up trying to like scale it. And at one point I sold, I think, like 600 t-shirts. And even at that point, it was already overwhelming. So I have a lot of admiration for anybody that's doing direct to consumer. I think that's why I love this space. It's why I chose to build in this space.
Yep.
I love selling to software companies like at HubSpot, but I do think e-commerce, like founders and business owners, I think there's that. I think it's just like there's that sense of like, it's people who just had a really cool idea and they went out and just like made it happen. And I feel like I get a lot of that in the e-commerce space, which I personally really love, because I know how hard it can be to scale a physical brand, physical product business. So my sentiment was the exact same. And then working at Klaviyo, I realized one day, I was like, why would I'd have to sell $1 million of t-shirts to make anywhere near what I'm making selling software. So I was like, I don't know, but that's really cool. So which one?
No, it's a fun.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, I guess this happens commonly, but it was a quite interesting experience to now be able to go solve for the exact pain point that we had at Outdoor Voices. And just quickly on what that was, we had this community playbook that I can get more into as we get going, but that was really working. And a lot of it happened to be offline through our neighborhood stores, through our IRL activations. And really the mission at Outdoor Voices was to get the world moving. And so what that looked and felt like was activating kind of on a local level across the US, dog jogs, exercise dress events. Like, how do we get people moving on a local level and then take that heat and amplify it to essentially attract new customers? And so this field marketing meets like small neighborhood stores meets ambassadors was kind of this triangle of community that started to really work for us. Meanwhile, we had raised a lot of dollars, and in a lot of ways we're expected to essentially buy our customers through Instagram and Facebook, like every D2C brand, and like fit our business into this little financial model, where ultimately like the cost to acquire, particularly in the activewear space, was really high and super competitive. And so we ended up spending way too much of our money raised, 30 to 40% of our dollars, trying to acquire customers that ultimately were not our high value. They were unsticky customers. And so that's exactly kind of the learning and the pain point that now we're solving kind of with 2IB.
So with that being, I mean, first of all, it's really cool that you were able to build the actual like use case and then build software around it. From someone who had to build software and then find use case, that's never how you want to do it. But I'm curious. So this idea of shifting from like, I think the typical or past notion of like dump money in the top of the funnel and just keep pouring in, get more customers, scale. I think that notion is sort of changing. How do you think brands should look at growing and scaling? And I know you mentioned community, so maybe that's a part of it, but do you mind filling us in on how you think about that new form of growth engine for D2C specifically?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we're at the highest level in the relationship business, and I think Klaviyo has been a massive tool, you know, in this way, and that's what 2IB is focused on, but more of community beyond transaction. But it's all about like, how am I going to most efficiently acquire a customer that actually likes and loves and wants to be kind of part of this group and purchase this product for the long run. And so what we've seen in a lot of our conversations and what I know to be true is the last 10 years have been focused on how can I get as many people into this as quickly as possible, whether they're really a fit for this or not. That's expensive. Now I want to be much more targeted in finding kind of the right high quality customers that I can really build a relationship with and total value with over the long term. So we're very much focused on long-term revenue and finding ways to engage with these super fans where you literally keep them with you through your lifetime. And so it's a relationships business. I think there's been too little focus there. And that's like the world that we're very much living in. It's how do we kind of take this ad optimized discovery platform out of the equation and really work directly with, incentivize directly our most loyal superfans and leverage them to help us grow. So I think of it just as a sports guy as making your fans, your community members, your customers an extension of your team. And that's where it gets really exciting as you can start to increase that incentive mechanism. It can start with rewards or perks that feel somewhat similar to a loyalty program, things that will keep them close to the brand. And then you can start to offer kind of higher incentives, whether it be revenue-based rewards or royalties around a co-created product. What we really believe in kind of from a future community commerce perspective is co-creation. So closeness with your trusted and progressively more trusted community members, and then incentivization. So rather than them showing loyalty by liking every Instagram post, really bring them in to power you getting smarter from a product development standpoint, product testing, co-creation standpoint, and incentivize them, give them brand coins, give them perks for their contributions.
When it comes to this idea, it's really a paradigm shift, I think, what you're talking about for a lot of brands. I know the smart ones and the ones that are forward thinking are already doing this. They have been doing this. But for the majority of e-commerce, I think there's this like kind of like hardwired thought or neural pathway of like, hey, we know that this model gets us sort of consistent customer output. When you're talking about moving my money down and investing in my customers, that's maybe something new for a lot of brands, especially ones listening. How do you think about shifting or like helping brands understand, maybe there's metrics behind this that you look at or point to, but like, how do you tell that story in a way that's really relatable or easy to kind of for brands to see like, oh no, I get it. Or, hey, these are the metrics I should be thinking about.
Yeah. That's the holy grail here. And what was so difficult at Outdoor Voices was we orchestrated these kind of community engagements across this, like a whole series or suite of channels. And so it made it very difficult to measure. As we were able to patch together the data, and so tracking engagement and then tying that to purchase data or total value of a customer, we were able to see that any of the members that were part of our community, so official community members, we called them doers, were 4 times more valuable than someone coming through an Instagram or Facebook. And so the headline here is our tool helps you make community measurable in a way that you can see purchase data, and right now it's through Shopify, connected to this engagement. And our essentially goal is help you learn what engagement for this community ultimately increases their frequency of purchase, increases their AOV, and then most importantly, increases their lifetime revenue. So making community measurable in a way that I can show to my board and to my team and to myself that community in this way really can pay off.
The word community you've mentioned a whole bunch, and I think in this podcast specifically, we've talked about it a lot. I have some issues with the term just because I think it gets used in so many different facets. So I'm really curious as to like for you, when you say community, what does that look or what
Yeah,
does that mean to you guys at 2IB and
it's
to you?
it's so simple. Yeah, I think of it as membership. And I agree, like I kind of tailor the use of it. I actually tend to not use it all that much, but it is something people are looking for. So community tied to real tangible measurement and being able to prove the impact is something new and what we're finding brands really want to buy into. Because yes, it's been so buzzy, but very simply, it's another way of saying like a formalized membership where brand and fan have decided to work together, build together, and then win together.
And then going back a little bit before, you mentioned like the community playbook that you guys had built. Is there maybe
Yes.
like can you potentially put that playbook in like a quick synopsis for people listening of like how that was built? Because I know brands today just want something that's like very followable, measurable. Like, do you mind
Mhm.
just giving us some insight into like what that community playbook looked like?
Yeah, of course. So I'll start with the playbook and then like very at a high level talk through how the platform works. But in with every brand, here's kind of the sequencing we go through. Starts with being very clear and articulate and simple about your mission and purpose, your reason for being. So with Outdoor Voices, it's get the world moving. We want to inspire movement because it makes happier, healthier people. Second is designing rituals for activation. So what are these consistent moments that we can galvanize people around? And it can start on a local level with 10 people. It can then grow to 100 people. And then we essentially create a one-pager, let's say, around what a good activation looks like and allow people kind of in other areas to then host it and scale kind of that ritual for activation kind of on a meaningful level. So that's the second piece. Again, in Outdoor Voices world, that was anything related to activity. So yoga instructors, people with dogs that would host dog walks, et cetera. You get it. But it was in support of the mission, and it gave us in the community kind of consistent re-engagement points or re-engagement moments to keep the brand top of mind and purchase another legging. The third is connection. And this is big, particularly the Gen Z audience, like is predominantly online and looking for friends. So friendship first became with Outdoor Voices like something super core. And quite literally these activations would be opportunities for people to spark bonds or become friends or meet people. And there's a version of that for every brand, I believe. Really what we're finding from a user perspective is money, connection, and fun are what people are looking for, and brands can be a vehicle for this. And then the fourth piece, just from a brand, like super simple, fundamental, a brand building perspective is about incentivization. So rewarding your customers for these activities versus them just existing unacknowledged, where they can start to earn status and progressively earn their way into cooler or kind of higher reward opportunities. So those are the four from a brand building perspective that we bring every brand through.
And then the second piece of that, I know you wanted to mention TYB and how you guys sort of
Yeah.
enable that.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of go through at a high level what the flow is. So a brand invites you to its community or rewards program or membership via a collectible. I'm going to keep pointing to Outdoor Voices because it's a tangible use case, but at Outdoor Voices, we had this blue doing things hat. You could only get the blue doing things hat by showing up to an event and participating in the mission. It then became this symbol of your belonging to the community where people would see it on the trail in Austin, Town Lake, Ladybird, whatever it's called, different yoga studios, etc. And it became kind of this symbol of my membership and like high five, we're part of the same thing. So now with the toolkit, with TYB, every brand starts with their digital version of that membership. The user joins, they get that collectible, it lives in their wallet and acts as their ID. It technically acts as their key into this brand world. Now that I'm in, I have that collectible in my wallet. I have access to these different essentially challenges that I can complete. And so the brand gets to choose from a menu of options of valuable brand engagement. So things like sharing to social or product testing or submitting a review, all things kind of in the early innings that we're familiar with as like helpful to a brand, submitting UGC, referring a friend. And then we have this core kind of engagement reward template that hosts any of this engagement. And so it can be an always on type thing. Like every time you share to TikTok and tag my brand, you automatically get brand coins to your wallet, or it can be kind of a one-time kind of activity in support of a launch, let's say. So post about this product, and when you do, we'll verify and you get coins to your wallet. So the users are essentially taking action and earning brand coins. These brand coins then drive a leaderboard. And on a weekly basis, the brand is rewarding people from the leaderboard with perks. The other thing you can do is take these brand coins, they live in your wallet, and go to the brand's website and check out for discounts or access to exclusive products. And so it's quite cool. It's essentially bringing you into this community. There's an engagement and reward kind of opportunity. It becomes this game where you earn status, connect with other people, and then you can go apply that to more product, access to events, etc. So this is very much our phase one of the toolkit, but it quite literally is this play to earn way of approaching loyalty, where it's not just about how much you as a customer spend with us, but it also includes how much you engage with us.
That's really cool. I think that's something that a lot of brands struggle with is everybody wants to do a loyalty program now. And I think in the past, loyalty has looked like very like static sort of incentive-based programs where like you sign up, you earn points, you get things, very transactional. It sounds like what you're building at TYB is much more kind of curated experiences that tie to incentives for a more authentic connection with customers.
Yeah. And I think really from a TYB perspective, what we're focused on is how do we increase the usage of these brand points or coins by making them more relevant, shareable, and social, because that's ultimately more incremental revenue. And I think it's something like 86% of loyalty points today go unused. But in today's experience, like Yotpo's kind of the incumbent, I'm sure you're familiar, but you have to like remember to go to Starface to use my Starface coins. So what we're doing is essentially giving users one portal in through their TYB wallet to rewards and relationships and notifications from their favorite brands. So when there's an opportunity to get 3x coins by showing up to this event, you're notified immediately, and all of your brands speak together. They're essentially in your wallet. And kind of the next phase, and really why we are powered by blockchain, but why this becomes interesting over time is brand points or brand coins starting to speak with one another. And so the ability to make them interoperable when a brand opts in, like let's say it's Nike and a smoothie company, like let's make our points interoperable to make essentially them more relevant in real time for users that want a smoothie today and a pair of shoes tomorrow. And blockchain really allows for that interoperability to take place. So we get quite excited about that as kind of like the next phase.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I want to get into that now. So TYB, I think you guys might get looped into, we do as well, like this like Web3 world. I think for me, I have my own thoughts on how that's changed. But for you, what is blockchain, like what does that mean for, I'm sure users are listening to this, a lot of them probably have heard it. What does blockchain mean to you? And then how do you see that technology enabling better experiences for customers in the future?
Yeah, blockchain simply for me means proof and ownership. And I think why I started TYB, kind of the North Star vision here, is this idea of true community ownership around brands. And so we're not there yet, but there's a world in which I would say we get to in the next 3 to 5 years, where alignment between people who start a brand and people who buy a brand is much closer. And so coming off of a D2C VC-backed experience, like I would argue that the founders and the fans weren't the ones winning. And so I really believe in this future where there can be from zero, let's take the next Nike, a from zero founded, funded, and run community brand. And blockchain is something that essentially proves that I, let's say, funded and am part of this brand, and then allows me to track essentially my contributions. But really kind of the North Star here is about aligning incentives where brands and fans truly have the infrastructure to build and win together and are less reliant on VC capital, where ultimately you're getting diluted and, you know, they're the ones that are going to get the money back first and aren't necessarily looking out for the long-term sustainable health of a brand, if that makes sense.
Totally. I think one of the things I learned very quickly with funding with Nifty Bridge, because I didn't experience the funding world at Klaviyo and HubSpot just because it was a much different. They were taking on hundreds of millions of dollars, and one of the things I learned though is that customers are like, in my opinion, I love. We have customers that are invested in the company, and those are my favorite. That's like been my favorite relationship. I love, our investors, they're great. But I think there's something really special about a customer that loves what you do and is like, hey, I want to invest in you guys and help you build this together, because that's at the end of the day, like that's who you're building it for. You're not necessarily building it for, I mean, granted, you want to make a bunch of money and make investors a bunch of money. But for me, I think I also judge myself based on like the value that I can provide and like the lives that, not to sound like over the top, but like, am I like actually impacting people's lives? And so that sense of like what you're talking about, community ownership, I think that's super powerful, because e-commerce is the perfect, I think, space to bring that to, because of the distribution that they have. And within that distribution, the amount of people that are like raising their hand saying, I want more of, I want to get involved.
Yeah. And like the incentive mechanism we keep top of, like that's most central here to what we're doing and what we'll continue to test into. But I think one of the like biggest opportunities kind of in the next year and a half is really creators that recognize this opportunity and have the toolkit to essentially like crowdfund from their fans. And then you have this like talk about sticky customer base, like they financially are engaged. They have shown that they care about what you're building. Like that's how we build kind of long-term longevity and sustainable relationships back to that relationship point.
The best example of this, and I've told people this, but I'm a huge Green Bay Packer fan. I don't know if that changes your opinion of me. I'm not sure where your loyalties lie, but one of the coolest things about the Packers is they are ownable by the fans. So they're the only franchise in the NFL where a fan can actually like buy into stock. It's not real stock. It's actually just all kind of fake. But I bought 7 years ago a share where I technically can go to their board meetings and I feel that sense of ownership. And even though fundamentally I actually own basically nothing, because they weren't I'm not an investor, so I technically can't sell it or trade it. But it makes me feel like I'm like, when I talk about the Packers, I say we, and people are like, dude, you're not on the Packers. I'm like, no, but I have this share certificate that technically means nothing, but I do feel like I'm a part of it. So I always tell that story when people say, hey, but like, you're actually not like, so for example, for TYB, right, you guys are giving them coins. People might say, oh, well, they're just incentive points. Like you can't actually, they don't represent like actual ownership. They can't go and like decide on decisions, but it's like, no, but it's not about that. It's like, it's making people feel like that sense that they're connected.
That's a really good, the Green Bay Packer example is like totally it. I do believe over time, like we will have the ability to offer real ownership, right? But I think right now, like exactly what you're describing is what we believe should be applied to physical product brands. That said, like this first phase is about growing the ecosystem, because to ever get to that point, we need the network there, we need the expertise there. And so right now it's how do we work with brands to like get people that want to play in this way into a world where they have the opportunity to do so, right? And then our job is to build that toolkit, figure out from a regulation standpoint how to make it possible. And I think that's what is appealing here is like there's certainly going to be a way to make it possible where real tokens or collectibles can mean ownership in a brand. But I love that example. My allegiance at the moment is with Arizona men's basketball, and we happen to be number one.
Okay, there you go. So I'm happy for you guys. I have no dog in the college basketball game, so
Oh, come on, it's the most fun.
I'm a big March Madness guy. I just like chaos. My family has a very competitive March Madness bracket every year. And I have to make it a point to beat all of my sisters, like my sister's husband and my sister's boyfriend. So like I take it extremely seriously. I'm running like models and I'm on Reddit trying to get the inside scoop. So I love college basketball.
Well, My parents both went to KU. They're Jayhawks fans, and they're number 2 right behind Arizona. But we are bringing Arizona men's basketball into TYB, so we're running a fan
Oh, let's
engagement
go.
channel.
That's awesome.
So you better be
Okay.
rooting for Arizona this year. Okay,
Fair enough. I'll have you guys going all the way then. That makes sense. So I want to get back one last point though on this, because I really wanted to touch on this. I think this is something that people miss in the world of blockchain. I've been in this space for a long time, and I think I have some issues with blockchain and like this whole world that sort of got a ton of funding and like people kind of exploiting the technology. But I think what I love about what you said is that this idea that you want to build this. So what you really are talking about is creating a network, right? It's creating sort of this global community of brands that think the same way, that walk the same way, talk the same way, and they think about their customers in a similar way. And once that network is built, it becomes really powerful because now you can create collaborative experiences. You can grow quicker together. The element of like, sort of like how Amazon, I almost think of like Amazon Prime as being the ultimate example of like bringing together all these different experiences and then hitting go and having the most, like if you take Amazon Prime away from me, like I literally will feel it. I will feel deep pain. So they've done a great job at building that network. So I love that that's your focus is like, how do we build this network? Because adoption is required for the value almost in a sense. Whereas I feel like some people miss that point where it's like, no, let me try and go out and build all this value without adoption. And like a network with nobody on it is not a network. So I love that you're thinking that way. I think it's going to help the space move forward. And I also think it's a breath of fresh air for people who always hear blockchain associated with things that are like getting, not in the news for great things. Like I really admire that. I think that's awesome. And I share a really similar viewpoint on it as well.
Yeah. People ask us this because we do have crypto investors and then we have consumer investors, but like 99% of the blockchain piece or Web3 or any of like that terminology is like fully obfuscated. Most, like I would say 90% of the people on the platform are not even aware that it's powered by blockchain and don't need to be. And I like that's a really kind of key differentiator and focus point for us. And I think what we're really good at is like translating this into why do I want to join, or like what's in it for me in kind of layman's terms. And so yes, we're going to need kind of the mass consumer here if we want this to be like a space that has massive impact. So yeah, it's a real project and providing real utility kind of in a world where there's some projects that it's like, what's happening here? Very hype driven, et cetera.
Yeah. And so you haven't pivoted to AI yet. Is that coming next year then, where you guys build an AI layer into?
Well, it's interesting because, like we are constantly thinking, how do we make this more automated on the brand side? And so like, for instance, we just launched with Selena Gomez and Rare Beauty, and they brought 10,000 new people into the space, 10,000 wallets created, bestie necklace collectible holders within one day, and it closed after 24 hours. With Selena Gomez launching, and then prior to that, Scarlett Johansson, like there's this crazy rabid enthusiastic fan base that essentially wants to go to work for the brand. And so they come into the channel and they are completing every challenge that's available. And what we've noticed is now there's not enough supply of prompts. And so that is an area in terms of how do we create brand right prompts or challenges on a consistent basis and without the brand manually having to do it all the time, where we will likely plug in some sort of AI component.
I want to talk about so this podcast also magnetic, right? It's this idea that in order to attract people, right, there's that sense of like opposites or being different or not being afraid to stand out. And I wanted to get if there's any fun stories or different ways that like during your time at Outdoor Voices, where you guys had some like really unique or fun strategies that helped you guys move that community from like 0 to 1 or 1 to 2.
Yeah, of course. I have quite a few. I'll just kind of rattle them off. But let's see. I very much believe like, and today more than ever, like there's so much brand sameness, and a lot of the brands we see today are not going to, be here next year. And so zigging essentially when others zag is so key, and doing things that are unexpected. So a few things that in the Outdoor Voices world really worked for us were we launched our running collection in collaboration with Hoka. And I think it was one of Hoka's first collaborations with kind of like a younger group. But we didn't offer it kind of just on our website. What we did was we built these AR shops that then we placed across 250 kind of trailheads throughout the US, like in kind of locations that we knew we had customers. And for the first 2 days, you had to quite literally run, walk, or bike to essentially buy the new collection. And that I remember like being something that we got massive press around, because it hit all of kind of the important points that I described in terms of, you know, connecting to the mission, rituals for activation, incentivizing people, like, but it was quite a fun package and kind of experimental way of activating the customer around purchase behavior by making them go to a point, to a trailhead to buy this or have access to this running product. So that was one example. We created the exercise dress, which has now become a big thing, and every brand has their own version, but we packaged it that way. It's literally like a dress you work out in with a bodysuit underneath. And so it was meant to like be your uniform, replace kind of your sports bra and legging for a time, and like you pop it on and you can go be active. We made the star of that campaign Little Michaela, who is an AI influencer. And that was before anyone was talking AI or working with influencers that weren't real. And so we were very good at like being, I guess, experimental in our thinking and then execution. And like, that's what people started to expect from us, was like, wow, they're going to surprise and delight me in a way that makes so much sense, but I never could have called it. And I'd say like that, like we were highly creative, and our team still is, but that was a lot of what made this community fall in love with us. We didn't look like every other leggings brand. We really approached it with this youthful spirit and creativity and innovativeness that now brands can do through the TYB platform as well.
That's really cool. I also one of the things I just like has come to me is this I now meeting you and then like seeing your brands and just kind of like in the world, kind of like how they talk about themselves, the things they do, the activations they have. I think there's this sense of like Ty Haney that's in those brands, whether it's TYB or Outdoor Voices. Like meeting you now, I feel that, I don't know if people have told you that, but like I'm sure that's intentional, where you've poured a lot of yourself into those brands, the way they talk, the way they believe in things, the things they love to do. As a owner of a brand, how can someone do that? Because I'm guessing it's intentional. So I guess my first question, is that intentional? And two is like, for somebody that has a brand today, how can they do that? Because I think it's a really powerful thing when you can bring a lot of who you are into the brand, especially today where founder-led brands are really crushing it.
I wouldn't like say it's intentional in the way that it's planned, but I think it's like obvious or organic in that like I'm leading these brands, and so they're going to look and feel like similar to me. But I would say similarly to like people finding success, like solving for a pain point they've experienced, I really guide people to looking inwards and understanding like their upbringing and like what they love to do, to like then connect to something that they're really in love with and like uniquely capable to bring to life, to then make it an entrepreneurial or business type journey. And so rather than looking at what exists out there on TikTok and hoping to look more like something that exists, it's all about like almost, you know, just to practice it, like a one pager, and identifying like you as an individual, like what are your differentiated pieces and uniquely capable kind of opportunities that make you you. So for me, it'd be growing up in Boulder, an athlete, loving sports, riding horses, loving dogs, liking to do a lot kind of activities. Like that makes so much sense as it comes to life as what I would have kind of the guts and energy and ultimately persistence to go after in the form of a brand, because it's really hard. And so one example is Outdoor Voices' mission to move looks and feels one way. That's still something that I wake up every day, like passionate about and excited about, is like, how am I going to move today? And that's something that many people need. So Joggy, which is an energy company, think replace Red Bull with clean premium energy, has a similar mission. It's maximize happiness through movement. And so you'll see it has a similar spirit. But because I'm okay with a lot of me being infused in it, and I think that's what makes it differentiated, unique to especially these like traditionally male dominated energy beverage companies. So very much, again, lean into and spend time carving out or identifying what makes you different and unique and go all the way to that side of the spectrum.
Yeah, I have some strong opinions on this topic in particular because I think you guys, like all of these brands that you've started, do a great job of this. But there's so many, I think e-commerce, especially apparel, but let's just take e-commerce, is so crowded. There's so many brands now. I think COVID, even before then it was crowded. COVID, obviously everybody's moving online. AI is only going to expedite the fact that now everything that was once a differentiator, like your really cool graphics or your really cool pictures or your amazing website, right? Like that's going to become more and more of a commodity as technology continues to get better. So, you start to think, how do I differentiate in a world where everything is a commodity? And it's so funny because I truly believe that it's tying in the human element, because I think that's what helps people stand out is like, AI, right, is like going to outcompete. It's going to create so many amazing experiences, graphics, copy. So how can you tie in human connection, I think, is going to be the future. And I'm curious to see if you disagree with this, but I feel like brands that can tie in, human connection, exactly what you're talking about with community, are going to be the ones that really win.
100%. We had one of our, I forget if it, like what we called it, but it was one of our kind of like operating values at OV. And I think it's just instinctive to me. It's human, not superhuman. And so for an example of this was at the time, like in the activewear space, everything looked like super muscly and perfect and like you work out every day. And so we started to lead with ads that were quite literally like things that showed up as tagged on Instagram. And I remember like one of our images from a customer was her in our shorts, like with a shot that showed cellulite, and it became the biggest thing overnight. And like it was on the Today Show, but it was us like very much embracing what makes people real. And I feel like that's a really good example of exactly what you're describing. But I do think back to like what drives people, like there's too much online. They need to touch grass. They need to have connection, and we need to create opportunities for them to do so around interests that they have.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited for the future of like what brands are going to look like. I think platforms like TYB, I think things that we're building are going to help enable that a little bit more. So moving into kind of like, I know we're coming up on the last like 5 minutes here. I wanted to get a sense, we're moving into the end of the year. I know you've probably got the holidays coming up. I wanted to get from you, like the biggest thing that you learned this year from founding, I think TYB. Well, first of all, let me ask this. TYB was founded last year or this year?
We launched with our first customer, Topicals, last October.
Okay.
Now we have 60 brands on platform.
Amazing. So you're 1 year into it. I wanted to get like first question, biggest thing you've learned from building TYB, or just if you want to keep it more general. And then the second question is, what are you most excited for heading into 2024?
I guess the biggest thing I learned I don't like is, and I might eat my words later, but selling into enterprise. Like I'm someone that moves fast, and I'm curious for you, like how you think about this. But as we've gone and kind of like pitched to enterprise, it becomes this 9 to 12 month thing. And then there's just so many decision makers. Like that process is something that personally I like very much want to veer away from. And so we've leaned into, particularly the beauty space and categories that can make decisions quickly, are open to kind of innovation, et cetera. But like, that's soul sucking to me to like be caught up in the bureaucracy. So that's one learning. What was your second question?
Most excited for in the new year?
Most excited for, we have so many phenomenal brands launching on TYB that I would say like a lot of the coolest kind of upstarts and more than upstarts, because we tend to work with brands between 20 and 300 million, are coming to life on TYB. So this is really going to become kind of the place for Gen Z rewards. But Joggy, we've been incubating, and Joggy, again, is that energy company. We have 3,000 Joggy Doggy holders. So we use TYB, of course, and they've helped us co-create this energy drink over the course of the year. we just went to market with it in our first 34 doors with a store called Foxtrot. I think you have one in Dallas. I'll send you some today. And it's outpacing Red Bull and 3X Monster. And so it's going to be really cool to go into what we call Go mode. And we're launching an Amazon Go Puff, and we have some really cool talent around this. But to really start to move into our Go mode to become a contender, to really like look at the world in a way to compete with the Red Bulls, et cetera, that feels very similar to what we set out to do with Outdoor Voices.
That's awesome. I hear all these things happening, and my next like immediate question is like, what's your favorite thing to do to find the silence or the peace or the quiet?
I jog every day with the dogs, and I spend half of the year here in Tucson, Arizona. I'm looking outside at like saguaro cactuses. I was joking with you earlier, but having been in Austin and New York for 10 years prior, like before that, it's actually quite nice to like be building with such focus and like social life that has certainly diminished in a healthy way, and like be able to go all in. So living in the desert, like from a location perspective, has been quite amazing. And then it's again, like very much finding ways to exercise on a daily basis. It's like the ultimate antidote to all that ails you.
That's great. Yeah, I can definitely resonate with. I was in Boston for 5 years, New York before that, but coming out to Dallas has been amazing. We have folks in Miami and Canada, so I travel out to LA in different spots, and that's kind of where I do my social interaction is when I'm traveling. But when I'm here in Dallas, I get so excited to just like sit down, no distractions, go for my walk. I'm in like a suburban area, so I can definitely sympathize with that. But I truly do love like having. I still get the social stuff when I'm out, visiting customers, traveling, visiting friends. But here it's been nice to just like really hone in and focus on like what I want to get done. So last question though, advice for e-commerce founders, entrepreneurs out there. They're listening in and they're like, Ty, I need some advice. What would you give them? I know it's the most generic question, but I have to ask it.
No, of course. Let's see. I think people, like, you got to try a lot early and often. And that's something I believed forever. Like, as a little kid, it would be, and it's something that my parents taught me. So like, try a lot of activities to learn what you like and what you don't like. And I think it's similar in building a company. Like, don't wait for perfection. Like, it's all about getting ideas out there and testing and learning and iterating quickly. And so compression of time creates value, and pace and speed, methodical hustle, a collection of ways to describe it, are an important way that I guide people to operating. Time is precious, and compression of time creates value.
That's great. All right, Ty. Well, this has been awesome. Really excited to see what you guys are building, and we'll have to link up at some point in Austin or wherever. I'll be rooting for Arizona, and thanks so much for your time.
Awesome. Go Cats.